Marvel's Spider-Man is the best-written Spider-Man game. It has the best-written adaptation of Peter Parker in gaming, and tells a tight and endearing story. The characters are fleshed out and resonate with the themes of the story. The plot is structured coherently, and allows the characters to remain purposeful and focused. Over the years, I've grown to appreciate more about what the story has to offer, and gravitated towards making a detailed video to discuss what I find interesting about the story and why its choices work. With that said, let's talk about the story.
The only way to fight a monster is to become one.
The manner in which Martin Li is involved in the story makes for a great reflection of the core of his character. At Feast, he presents an image of a man who wants to make positive change. He built his legacy around helping those in need, which inspires May and Peter to join him on his mission. To show us the strength of their relationship with Li, the first scene between these characters is a celebration of May's 5 years of service at Feast. Without directly telling us or having to rely on exposition, we can see through Li's actions that he has a commitment to showing his gratitude, making sure the moment is as special and memorable as it can be for May. So much is achieved through this singular introduction in terms of building Martin Li's character, while setting up more for us to learn about him.
Well, May's always told me if you help someone,
you help everyone. Maybe we should send May to City Hall to have a word with Mayor.
From an initial viewing, this might sound like an offhand remark, but once you have the full picture, you'll realize that this is rather a display of his darker thoughts, and that's what's effective about how this foreshadows his villainous side. No one could possibly know why he said this until we learn more about him. Martin Li's character focuses on the concepts of duality and balance, and slowly shifting towards that darker half of him allows the story to build towards his connection to those ideas. To move forward with his story, we're specifically shown that he's focused on writing something. Now, this could be written off as a general task he has to do at Feast, but as a subtle way of hinting that something is off about Li, they show him sliding the file within a drawer instead of simply putting it down. Now, this might seem like a small detail to fixate on, but I think details like this are rewarding for the player to pick up on through multiple playthroughs. Now that we've seen what's behind the curtain, we now get to witness some of the tricks used to craft an illusion of who this character is. A great way to maintain the illusion is to force a viewer into an ambiguity. When Peter tells Li about the demon mask MJ found, his immediate resort is to show concern. But why is that? Is it because he's afraid of what the mask represents? Or is it because he knows more than he's letting on? We can't know for sure, but there's a reason for the player to be dreading the possibility that Li is secretly in on this. We've seen his connection to the Parker family, and his mission can bring plenty of good if it's motivated sincerely. So these decisions come across as conscious efforts to make players afraid of what the truth may be, rather than purely excited for it. Another great example as to how the story adds to the dread is when Martin Li says he'll be out of town, without being able to specify for how long.
Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to let you know I'm headed out of town. You're in charge while I'm gone.
Well, you can count on me. How long will you be away?
Really don't know.
is everything okay?
It's some personal business I've been planning for a while. But please take care of this place. It represents the best part of me.
Seeing the way this line is delivered, it's clear that Lee knows he's going to do something terrible, but his belief in his mission was sincere. This scene serves as a passing of the torch to someone Lee is justified in believing won't resort to the same failings he has. It's also an effective setup for his plans at City Hall. We learn more about his obsession with Norman through his phone call to him, alongside the secret room that shows us Lee has been following Norman's career over the years. It leaves the player curious about what we'll learn about Lee's backstory, why he would have such an obsession over one person. Especially since it ties into his growing, uncontrollable pain and anger that empowers his demon side to take over.
Can feel my power growing, feeding off my anger. Father would say I've lost the path of balance, but he could never understand. The only way to fight a monster is to become one.
As Peter learns about this, he eventually gets caught by Lee, and this leads into a subtle confrontation that shows us much about these characters and how their relationship is changing without outright telling us.
Hello, Peter.
Mr. Lee. I thought you were out of town.
Did you find what you were looking for?
Peter uses roundabout wording to call out Lee, hinting that he knows he's lying and that his stories aren't adding up. And due to how major of an event City Hall was, Lee is now forced to address it. Not only does it inform us more about his character, but it also shows Peter's attentiveness towards learning what he can about his enemy.
You must have heard about City Hall.
Yes. Tragic.
On the surface, this could be seen as a cover-up, but with the knowledge that Lee never wanted to be a villain, deep down, he also says this out of sorrow that others had to die to fulfill his mission. I imagine that's why he stops one of his demons from killing Miles. He feels bad enough for the pain he had to cause, and once he realizes that Spider-Man won't show up as planned, he doesn't engage in needless bloodshed.
Peter was there. He was very lucky.
At an Osborn rally. I didn't know you were a fan.
Part of the heavy lifting for this line comes from the actor's performance, when he looks down briefly while commenting on a surprise. On the surface, this is just a filler statement to move the conversation forward, but as far as Peter and Lee's subtle confrontation, this shows us that Lee is trying to tell Peter something, that he never meant for Peter to get hurt by the attack. He thought too highly of Peter to ever show up at a rally for someone like Norman Osborn, so it only adds to Lee's sense of sorrow for the consequences his actions bring. So before he shifts focus back onto his mission, he gives Peter a way out by warning him to stay out of the situation.
What matters is, you are both safe.
Amen.
But the bombers are still out there. Who knows what they've planned next?
I don't think you or May have anything to worry about. As long as you stay away from places you're not supposed to be.
And to show that he means business, he sends a group of people to jump Peter, but doesn't intend for them to actually kill him. We can see it in his performance that it pains him to have to make threats like this to deter Peter from getting involved, but the fact that they don't kill him reinforces the message to Peter that he has a way out. When Peter comes back to confront Lee again, the energy of the conversation changes once Lee believes he's talking to a different person. Not knowing who Spider-Man is, we get to learn about what Lee's thought process was behind if Spider-Man were to interfere.
I must be honest. I was hoping to bring you here. My abilities lend me a certain persuasiveness. I've been watching you. I was waiting for you at City Hall. You never came. Where were you?
Is this real or in my mind?
It was a shame so many had to die with no heroes to save them.
What's interesting about this is how this slots right in with the fact that Lee doesn't want to be a villain and only makes decisions he believes he has to make to punish Norman. Expecting Spider-Man to show up displays an attempt to mitigate casualties, while the bombing shows that he needed a real threat and real consequences to force blood on Norman's hands.
And Norman wanted to use him. A futile gesture, in the end. And where was Norman during all this? Slinking like a rat. He knew what was going to happen. And he fled. Norman is a hidden cancer on this city. He must be excised with no trace of his corruption to return. Norman hides behind his mask of lies. I will break it apart and drag him into the light. Put on the mask. Become one of us.
In addition to the mitigation of civilian casualties, Mr. Negative saw something to gain in corrupting Spider-Man. To bring out the worst in someone who fights crime would bring him closer to crossing lines he normally wouldn't, such as killing his enemies. By convincing Spider-Man they ultimately want the same thing for the city, and that Norman is the core problem, he can turn his greatest hindrance into his greatest ally. His mistake here was underestimating Spider-Man's willpower to stand by his moral convictions, in spite of how influential and effective his corrupting touch can be, especially in reaching people's darkest temptations. This creates a compelling dynamic between the two, because with all of their differences, they share an inability to let go of their core beliefs, and that only escalates the tension between their fights. Peter's tragedy pushed him to build his sense of responsibility and make sure nobody goes through what his uncle went through, while Lee's tragedy pushed him to relentlessly seek revenge for his parents. What Peter believes in helps everyone, while what Lee believes in only helps himself. The dark side of Martin Lee tells a haunting, yet powerful story about what happens when you bring out the worst in people in the face of bad. It plays into a cycle of hate and violence that doesn't change what went wrong, rather it extends its consequences onto others. In trying to make Norman pay, Lee wants to force Norman to release Devil's Breath so that he loses everything he cares about through his own actions, the same way Lee did when he received his powers as a child. But the pain doesn't end for Lee. If his plan had actually succeeded, his pain only would have spread onto everyone else in the city, and once Doc Ock enables him to bring his plan into fruition, we see the horrifying consequences this has on the city, leading to the death of one of the last people Lee would ever want to hurt in his pursuit of revenge. As Lee becomes completely consumed by the demon, Peter makes his final pleas for Lee to fight the demon, and realize that he'll only end up destroying who he was.
Why do you insist on trying to save this piece of scum?
I'm trying to save you, Martin!
And by the end of it, we're given a fairly ambiguous ending, but one that works in concluding Lee's story for the game. We've seen his plan set into motion, we've seen how it made him lose everything, and we've seen the full story that led him to becoming this way. But once Spider-Man has defeated him, we see him grabbing the anti-serum at the end, as if he's considering what Spider-Man has to say. It shows a realization that he has more of a choice than he thought, and that he isn't purely evil for the sake of it. He has a possibility for redemption that is yet to be seen. But that of course leaves us with many questions to be answered for the future. How will he overcome the demon for good? How will his time in the raft change him? What would convince him to try resuming a normal life if given the chance to? There's a lot of potential on where to take this story, but for the time being, this game has done enough for his character to be a standout villain, with numerous layers shown through his interactions, alongside strong messages to take away from his story.
If you want to change the world, you have to be the kind of man who can make the hardest decisions.
Otto Octavius represents the problem with someone who does the right thing for personal gain rather than the good of everyone else. It creates a strong illusion of someone who fights for the right ideals, and it makes it easy to underestimate what he's willing to do in the face of hardship. Many choices in the storytelling effectively set up Otto's reasons to drop the facade and unapologetically fight for what he wants. We first see Otto struggling at Octavius Industries. He can only afford to have one scientist on his team, and often runs into lab accidents that will cost him over time. He doesn't have many ways out since he relies on grants to sustain his work, and the game makes it very clear that he's already on thin ice.
I chose to leave in exchange for a settlement, but that money didn't last very long. I've relied on grants ever since. If this project doesn't work...
Don't worry. It'll work.
The game ensures that Otto has believable problems that factor into his decisions in the story. In spite of this, Otto shows concern for Peter's well-being and his financial situation. He recognizes Peter's strengths and uses them to validate his role in his work. He shows understanding when he learns that Peter is Spider-Man, and even downplays his discovery to ease Peter's worries.
I guess if you design his equipment, you're bound to be a target too. Such a disappointment. Parker.
And he ensures that Peter feels safe with Otto, knowing that he's involved with Spider-Man in some way. It justifies Peter's trust in Otto and why he may overlook potential flaws that he should be more concerned about. And that's what makes Otto's manipulation so effective in this game. It's not obvious what he's doing at first to manipulate Peter. Sure, we know he's eventually going to become Doc Ock because that's common knowledge, but I doubt anyone playing this game for the first time could have guessed these small moments of Otto showing kindness and care to Peter were actually conscious manipulation tactics. Another effective contributor to Otto having believable problems is the way in which Norman is shown to rival his creations. Since Norman was an old friend and business partner to Otto, it becomes more personal when his lab starts to lose funding and resources. Norman deliberately creates this scheme where he excuses Otto's violations to create a false sense of leniency, only to suddenly cut off Otto's funding so he has a motivation to return to Oscorp under a lower position. He even brings Otto's test subject to Oscorp in front of Otto's face while pretending to do so for benign reasons, just to rub salt in the wound.
I'm trying to help you, Otto. You're free to continue your work in a secure environment.
At Oscorp.
You always were the smartest guy in the room.
You haven't changed a bit.
Neither of you.
This is great for Norman's character, as it solidifies his crooked personality and justifies why Otto would hate him so much. Norman lacks loyalty for his own friends and willfully toys with people's livelihoods to remain in power. It only grows Otto's desire to take it all from him and for the world to see the man that Otto sees. He was most definitely inspired by the City Hall bombing, and his reaction to the event shows him fixating on Norman rather than the tragedy of what happened, and establishing these morally questionable responses helps justify the changes in his ideology that explains why he becomes a villain.
In some sad, sick way, the City Hall attack may have done some good. Norman's approval ratings are sinking. The people are starting to realize their beloved mayor only cares about himself. Sometimes it takes a tragedy to wake people up to the truth, to finally see the monster they themselves elected.
But on top of Norman making numerous efforts to sabotage Otto, we learn that Otto has a condition that reduces his motor functions over time, which explains his focus on prosthetics as his way of changing the world. While this could be seen as a necessity for Otto to do more good in isolation, the larger picture makes it clear that this is a sign of Otto being more selfishly motivated. As Otto progresses and makes more breakthroughs in the story, he grows excited to the point of being reckless once he reaches the final steps. He's prepared to celebrate already before having tested the arms. He's so proud of his success that he takes offense to any kind of criticism or skepticism of what he created.
Doctor, I found a potential problem.
Everything has problems if you look hard enough. But fortune favors the bold.
Otto, the neural web isn't isolating your motor neurons. It could be affecting other parts of your brain, your inhibitions, your mood. I just think we need some more tests.
We've got enough testing! For the first time in my life, I don't feel like a failure. I feel like me.
And while Peter should be more attentive of Otto after learning how damaging the neural interface can be, Otto plays on Peter's faith in him to rest his concerns. When Peter urges Otto to slow down and give it time, Otto isn't really sincere in the way that he concedes to Peter.
Otto, you're not a failure. But this could permanently damage your mind. Please.
Right.
This is all a front to get Peter to calm down, and it works given Peter's belief in Otto striving for good. If Peter can learn from his mistakes, shouldn't Otto be able to do the same? In Peter's eyes, Otto is looking to make the best choices he can, and Otto just needs to fight a little bit longer to hold up that image, causing Peter to overlook how crucial it is, especially now, to keep tabs on Otto and to make sure his bug fixes are safe. But I think the largest part that Peter has overlooked is how much of this is Otto himself or the neural interface. And it's interesting how Peter has to grapple with this after Otto becomes Doc Ock. I think it's clear that Otto himself is the problem, not just the neural interface. A clear example of this is how Otto pre-built weapons into his claws and arms. Why would he need to do that when creating prosthetics for people? The neural interface couldn't have caused this design choice since he only started using this version of it after the arms were complete. Otto's hatred for Norman was genuine, so I can only imagine Otto had this idea in his head from the beginning and prepared to execute it before finishing his project. Given how soon he was able to act, he must have been prepared from the beginning. And that's really what makes Otto so terrifying in this game. His intelligence enables him to play on people's perception of him and cause them to underestimate what he's really capable of and willing to do. Peter couldn't have seen this coming because of his faith in his mentor. Norman couldn't have seen this coming because he believes that Otto is too small and too restrained to act against him.
You have no idea what you're in for.
Once Otto becomes Doc Ock, the transition feels natural. There was enough build-up to support Otto's change, and his plan is centered around his personal goals and hatred towards Norman. It all makes sense for his character. He wants Norman to suffer, so he sends the villains to attack Oscorp properties. He remains in control by targeting law enforcement and deterring Spider-Man's involvement. Otto has a level of respect for Peter and even wants him to understand his side, so he doesn't want to go through with immediately killing him. When Otto releases Devil's Breath, he forces Norman to receive blame for the pandemic, and Otto himself wants the credit for saving the city with the anti-serum. Given that he isn't truly altruistic, it makes sense that instead of curing the city straight away, he will force Norman to choose between admitting the truth or letting the city suffer forever. Otto believes that either would be able to destroy Norman's image. While I believe that Otto's actions can't just be blamed on the neural interface, I do believe that some of his shifting behavior can be explained by this. It's not that Otto's twisted morals and desires are spawned by the neural interface, rather it amplifies Otto's emotions and causes him to react more extremely than he normally would. A good example is the way he receives Spider-Man's pushback against him.
Spider-Man, I presume. If you really cared about this city, you'd be helping me expose Osborn for the criminal he is.
By killing innocent people?
I would have restored the power.
You're sick. You need help.
I have all the help I need, and we will not stop until Norman gets what he deserves.
In Otto's mind, he believes Peter doesn't care about what he has to say, or what his issues with Osborn are. His hang-up on Otto is seen as a dismissal of it, which would provoke Otto to be angrier than he normally would, without the damage being done to his mind. And from there, that's where his plan with Peter has changed. First he wanted to deter his involvement. Now he wants to torture him because he has grown a personal hatred of Peter as well.
But Octavius is paying, and he wants to torture you, which I respect.
It only makes sense that Otto makes this more personal the more Spider-Man pushes back against him. A great way to build their rivalry is by forcing their ideas to clash more and more, which amplifies their rejection of one another. And while it's a smaller detail, it's great that they're showing Otto's shift in mental state the more his plan has drawbacks. When Spider-Man takes down his villains and Otto sees that Lee has failed, he throws him away like nothing despite the connection they've formed.
Seems like Otto and Lee have more of a history than I thought. How long have they known each other?
Otto seemingly wanted to help Lee after the accident, but this goes to show that Otto is doing this purely for himself. The mask is completely removed as he deals with more failures and is reaching closer to the final steps of his plan.
That look on your face. You can't imagine how satisfying it is.
Their final confrontation is really a shift in power amongst the two. Norman is now the desperate one who has to make a choice between his life and conceding to what Otto has to say. Otto has the full control to force this decision onto Norman, but to Otto's surprise, Norman is less focused on saving his own life and is more focused on hurting Otto in his last moments, showing his pure dedication to holding on to whatever power he has no matter what. It solidifies who Norman truly is at his core and reaffirms Otto's hatred of Norman. At this point, Norman's words are such a hit on Otto's ego that he completely drops his plan just to immediately punish Norman out of anger, which is an interesting way to justify why Otto drops his grand plan he spent so much time and effort building up to. It shows that his ego can distract him from his original motivation and causes him to leave his plan unfinished. This final scene with Peter and Otto cements how broken their relationship has become. Peter only sees the horrors that Otto has brought to the city rather than the good he has done. In his eyes, Otto has betrayed everything he claimed to believe in. It's only natural that Peter drops his naive view of Otto and realizes that there were problems building up from the start. And Otto's refusal of accountability only cements this in Peter's eyes. He first accuses Peter of turning on him after he was the one who tried to torture him and kill him for trying to protect the city from all of his dangerous schemes. Peter can see right through Otto when he tries to blame everything on the neural interface.
Yes, of course. You're right, Peter. Oh, I see that now. The neural interface affected my mind. But I can fix it. We can fix it. Together. If you'll help me.
Do everything I can. I'll make sure you get the best help.
No! If they put me away, they'll take my arms. I'll be trapped in this useless body. That wasn't me. You said you'd never abandon me. You promised. Remember?
Everything starts to make sense to Peter, and the scene tells us why Peter constantly improves and why Otto only gets worse. Peter takes accountability when he's at fault, sometimes even too much.
This is all my fault.
No, not this song again.
He sees every mistake as a lesson for how to do better in the future. Even if there's a difficult choice for him to make, he remains honest and accepts when he's part of the problem. He's not motivated by any reward, he's motivated by his responsibility to others. Otto regularly dodges accountability. He always needs someone to blame for his problems and sees every criticism as an attack on his success rather than an opportunity to improve. He manipulates people to stay on his side, while Peter uses the truth and his heart to maintain all of his allies. That's why Spider-Man still has a loyal team by the end, while Otto doesn't.
Just ask for help next time. Oh, you are so much like Ben. You have to learn to swallow that Parker pride and accept that you're human, like the rest of us.
One of the ways this game tries to critique Peter's character is by highlighting his tendency to refuse help when he needs it, or to be overprotective of others who simply want to help him. Through this focus on the importance of building allies, Peter has a variety of allies to convey different takeaways. Some allies of his remain, and some turn into his enemies. On Peter's side, we have Martin Lee, who was Peter's ally at Feast. Their shared desire to help everyone made them effective allies, up until Lee allowed his darker half to overtake his life. While Lee truly cared about the people he was working with, his ultimate failing was never trusting them to help him overcome his inner demons. If he went to anybody for help, May and Peter would have made sure that Lee was given the best help he could, and that their relationship wouldn't have been soured the way it was in the game. Through his failings, this tells us the importance of trusting your allies to save you from steering onto the wrong path. Otto Octavius was Peter's ally at Octavius Industries. The larger issue for Otto is that he was never truly on anybody's side, except for his own, and that only drew a wedge between Peter and Otto. Otto isn't someone who is good at listening, and a partnership can never succeed if this is who Otto chooses to be moving forward. The takeaway from his character is that only serving and listening to yourself will prevent others from helping you improve. Sometimes an antagonistic figure can become one of Spider-Man's allies as well. Silver Sable differs from Spider-Man's methods, as Spider-Man is a vigilante, and Sable runs a private security force. From her perspective, Spider-Man's interference can disrupt protocol and worsen the outcomes of situations that she believes she can control, hence why she blames him for the failure to secure Devil's Breath alongside the raft breakouts. But Spider-Man's insistence on his principles convinces Sable that Spider-Man is not the enemy and that they should be working together if they want to get the job done, instead of trying to exclude each other.
Recent events give me pause. Your rescue of Osborn, despite his hatred, has affected me. I must return home, reflect on this life I choose.
Dang. I think I'm actually gonna miss you and your Death Troopers.
Unfortunately, my agents will stay. Though I question our work, they do not. And Osborn continues to pay. I am sorry.
So close to being good news.
Indeed. I will miss you and your bizarre witticism, Spider-Man. Until we meet again.
Sometimes people work better together in spite of their differences versus fighting against each other. And the takeaway here is to learn to set differences aside and find a way to work through them when fighting for the same cause. On Spider-Man's side, Yuri was Spider-Man's ally for a good while. Both of them shared a sense of justice and have accepted the risks to their roles in the city. Throughout the main story, their partnership has been effective for the most part, but started to shift once we get to the DLCs. From there, we learned that Yuri was holding in a lot of turmoil that comes with her job that she never opened up to Spider-Man about, which led to her downfall by losing her job as a police captain in pursuit of revenge. From here, we're meant to take away the importance of showing vulnerability instead of bottling everything forever. Also on Spider-Man's side, we have Jefferson Davis. This is one of Spider-Man's healthier partnerships, though it didn't last very long due to the events of City Hall. His partnership with Spider-Man demonstrates the value of sacrifice. One of his major acts while helping Spider-Man was putting himself on the line to save him, even though he doesn't have powers. His final act was to shield others from the City Hall bombing by using himself, standing by his belief that a hero is just a guy who doesn't give up.
Maybe I'm just a guy who doesn't give up.
This motivates his son Miles, someone who is an ally to both Peter and Spider-Man in this game. On Peter's side, Miles chose to help out at Feast upon Peter offering Miles the opportunity. On Spider-Man's side, Miles chose to be Spider-Man's eyes and ears at Feast. Miles works really well for this, considering he is set up to be the next Spider-Man in this universe. This story makes deliberate comparisons between Peter and Miles, two people who lost their father figures at a young age and were motivated to help people afterwards.
I talked to him at the funeral. He's a smart kid. He's just having a tough time.
I knew a boy like that once.
I remember it helped to, stay busy. Might help him too.
From Peter's first interaction with Miles, he can tell exactly what he's going through, and it's a really smart way to imply how Peter was at that age when he lost Ben. Miles is a good representation of how one can be inspired by their allies and guided to do more good in the world. MJ's involvement is where the main focus on Peter's flaws are highlighted. Peter's overprotectiveness caused him to take control over MJ's work, and this eventually caused them to split apart. MJ strongly believes in the good her career can bring, and Spider-Man seems to just get in the way of it because he's worried about losing his loved ones. And it's a completely understandable motivation for a character that became a hero because his failure made him lose a loved one. But given how their work may cross over, they were bound to cross paths eventually, and this opened a chance for them to reconnect and see if a partnership between them can work. And the conflict is overall well done since both sides have understandable motivations for their actions, and the story has both of them grow to compromise to resolve their differences. MJ's gripes with Peter constantly getting in the way of her work and disrupting her success are reasonable, and Peter eventually coming to terms with this works once he understands where MJ is coming from and realizes that he needs to start accepting more help, which ties into a larger lesson that Aunt May helps Peter learn in this game.
You have to learn to swallow that Parker pride and accept that you're human, like the rest of us.
While Peter thinks May is just an ally for Peter, she's also an ally for Spider-Man since she knows who Peter really is. Asking for help doesn't just extend to Peter's personal life, but also his job as Spider-Man. While it's his responsibility to use his powers to help others, it's also his responsibility to know his limits and to know when he should accept help from others.
You are not alone anymore, Pete. Let Miles and me look after Feast. You find Norman. You find the cure.
Thanks, partner.
The takeaway here is to understand and accept your own limits, because our allies exist to push us beyond them, and that's really what Spider-Man's main allies accomplish in this game. Miles helps at Feast while Peter is busy being Spider-Man. Aunt May runs Feast and keeps the shelter running while Peter is busy being Spider-Man. MJ investigates clues and gets closer to the truth while Peter is busy being Spider-Man. All of this helps the city and Spider-Man's work in saving the city, and through Peter's various allies, he learns the importance of working with others and his responsibility to understand and accept his limits instead of taking the burden all on his own.
And I am so proud of you. And Ben would be too. All the people you've saved.
The last thing I want to discuss is the resilience of Peter Parker. As a character, his areas of growth are well fleshed out, and it takes him on a compelling journey of growth. But what I find most inspiring about this version of Peter Parker is his resilience. And with the plethora of Spider-Man depictions in video games, this game easily does the best job showing this. Peter's financial struggles are put to the forefront at the beginning, yet he still powers through his mission to take on Fisk for good. In spite of the constant struggles within Octavius Industries, Peter fights his way to believe in the cause and to change the world. He maintains strong moral convictions when he stands by his opposition to killing and the worth of his methods when they get wrongfully blamed for setbacks. He'll stay in the fight even if he's nearly outmatched, because he knows it's better to try than to run away when his help is needed. He'll wake up with 14 broken bones and still stay in the fight, performing under the pressure of the city being overrun with criminals and supervillains. Even with all the damage they've done, he'll still try to reach them and never lose his compassion for others. He never looks for an easy way out, even when his aunt could go at any moment. And once he learns that he has to make a choice between his aunt and the city, he doesn't put the city at jeopardy to save her life. He fully accepts that what he wants can't be more important than what's good for the entire city. What's interesting about how Peter loses his parental figures is how they both fall on Peter, but for different reasons. Peter allowed Ben to die because he was irresponsible, but Peter allowed May to die because he was responsible. It's a cruel way to bring down Peter, considering he became Spider-Man to make up for his failure, to make sure nobody goes through what Ben went through. But because he can't save everyone, he's forced to live through it again. But with his long experience as Spider-Man, it only makes sense for him to have the strength to keep going. Through all of the hardship, betrayal, and tragedy, Spider-Man never loses the will to keep fighting for everyone.
Well, May's always told me if you help someone,
You help everyone.
I would give this story a solid 9 out of 10. It's one of the better Spider-Man stories out there, especially in modern times. I've said enough to outline why I think it's the best written Spider-Man game, but what do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want more of these reviews. And be sure to check out some of my other Spider-Man videos on the channel. That's all I have for now. I'll see you all later. Goodbye.